We are going to be breaking down some of the big conference realignment news. We don't always hit conference realignment on the show, but this particular round of alignment, I guess if that's what we want to call it, has hit close to home for us. If you don't know already, North Dakota State off to the Mountain West, Sacramento State is going to the MAC. We are going to be talking about all of what that means tonight. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I am joined by the intern tonight, Intern Tones. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Ready to talk realignment, but
Yeah,
not for your
I mean,
car.
that's a different story, that's for sure. Um, but yeah, just like a lot of exciting stuff going on. What do we got first?
So, one of the things, and this is, me being kind of newer to the FCS space, right? North Dakota State University, what I know about them, perennial, you know, not necessarily winning it all, but they're always in the running. And so what are we expecting from North Dakota State when they make the jump into the Mountain West Conference?
I think this is a team that's going to be ready to hit the ground running. They typically put a lot of guys in the NFL. The Bison, as it's pronounced, so that's another thing for you FBS fans to get familiar with. It's actually pronounced Bison, not Bison. Um, but yeah, the Bison do a great job. They're an offensive line factory. Like they churn out really good linemen. They know to scout good players and develop them. It's something that you don't really commonly see elsewhere. They recruit their home state very well, and they manage to supplant that with having good running backs and good players elsewhere. Like, they have potentially one of the best quarterbacks in the draft this year in Cole Payton. And that's just in the lineage of quarterbacks. They've had Carson Wentz and Trey Lance in the past. Um, but yeah, Cole Payton, I actually saw recently that someone said he could potentially be the second quarterback off the board. So this program can produce good talent, and they're 9-4 all time against FBS competition. So playing a
Wow.
team a division up, and they're 9-4 in those games. Um,
That's they're definitely punching above their weight. What do you think? Why did this move take so long? Why didn't they join the FBS sooner?
I think there's just a lot of, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that has to get worked out. They wanted. I think they started to get their eyes on this move probably like 5 or so years ago. They got to the point where they've been there, they've done that. They won a ton of FCS titles, more than any other program in history, and they accomplished all they could accomplish at that point. They've hit their ceiling. So they started, developing what their facilities could look like, get donations that way. Just make sure that their program is ready to hit the ground running once they move up. And then from there, they kind of had to figure out the conference situation because usually you need a conference to get them invited. We'll definitely be touching on that a lot more later on when we talk about Sacramento State. But they needed a conference to invite them. And with the whole Pac 12 Mountain West split going on, that created that window of opportunity they needed. They got the donations they needed. And here we are. Like they're in the Mountain West. They're in a conference that they fit well in. It's going to be really exciting.
When I was kind of looking into some of the moves, or more about these moves, how much did they have? They had to pay money to join the conference, and I think it's in the ballpark of around 20 million to join to make this move. North Dakota State fans, obviously are keeping the lights on, to say the least. Um, but do you see them struggling in any regard to move up into the FBS, either through
I
NIL or otherwise?
I think NIL will kind of be a little bit of a struggle. I think the one thing that they may run into is, when they're at the FBS level, more available, on TV more. They may deal with more teams trying to recruit their roster until we finally figure out what we need to do about that, because that's a whole other issue. And I think they'll kind of run into challenges of that. The good news is this is a program that really thrives on homegrown talent. A lot of guys are really excited to wear that Bison helmet. Like they grow up wanting to be part of this program, and the program itself is just so good. Like the winning culture behind it, the coaches, just from the top to the bottom. Like this is a program that is absolutely ready. It'll be kind of interesting to see how. I think some units are going to kind of run into struggles. Like how is the secondary going to deal with the speed of FBS receivers and stuff? I think most of the time call-ups, you kind of wonder how they're going to do in the trenches, but I have no worries about this team in the trenches. I think they're going to be able to hold up really well. I think it's going to be kind of what it looks like in the back end of the defense. And, of course, outside of a few guys, like you may not see as much skill talent as you would see with some of the other teams in the Mountain West, like UNLV or even what New Mexico is building right now.
Yeah, and there'll be kinks to ironed out, of course. With their, I'm assuming it's similar to Nebraska where, they pull all the talent in the whole state. So when you're centralizing all North Dakota as the state, all of their talent into one school, you're gonna have legacy. You're gonna have that tradition, and I think that's big. That in soccer terms, like if a club goes from the USL to the MLS, they have to bid as an expansion team, and part of that is the fan base that factors into their decision whether they want to bring a team in. I don't know if that's true for college football, but they'll certainly have that behind them still. That I doubt that'll change.
Absolutely. And I could see a lot of that going on too. I think what else is going to be interesting is this is going to be a whole lot of new competition, a lot of programs that they aren't familiar with playing. And of course, for those Mountain West programs, it's also going to be interesting heading to the Fargo Dome. The Fargo Dome is going to be a really cool venue to have at the FBS level. Only the second on-campus dome at the FBS level. Do you want to try your chance at who the only one is?
Buffalo?
No, close though.
Syracuse?
Yes.
I knew it.
Syracuse is the other one. You were in the right state, just down the road a little bit.
Down the street a little bit.
I do the wheel. So I didn't interrupt you because I knew the wheels are turning in the right direction on that one. But yeah, so only the second on-campus dome in FBS. That's going to be really awesome to see games there. They're going to travel to all these different venues. They're going to have to deal with a team like Air Force that runs a triple option. They used to have a lot of experience in triple option. A lot of teams at the FCS level used to run that, but most of them have gone away from that now. So it's been a few years since they've experienced an option team. And, you got the high-flying offense at UNLV. North Dakota State versus Hawaii is just going to be straight up awesome. Like, I don't even know which way they're going to go in year one. Like, are they going to play each other in the Fargo Dome or out on the island? No matter what, I am looking forward to that matchup. That game is going to be a lot of fun. I also like that Northern Illinois kind of in the Mountain West, like they kind of help bridge. Like NIU is a very weird fit in the Mountain West, but North Dakota State kind of helps bridge that a little bit. Like North Dakota State is reasonably close to the rest of the Mountain West, but they're also reasonably close to NIU. So you got like a good matchup that you could throw in there in rivalry week. Kind of be like, all right, you two are close together. You could pair up a little bit. So I'm looking forward to what that game will look like. In general, though, like it's going to be really interesting. And of course, NIU, since that came up, obviously the crazy news today, losing their coach to the NFL in February. So
Wow.
that is a program.
Where'd he go?
He went to the Seahawks,
As their offensive coordinator?
just like an assistant position.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I
Huh.
think that was a pretty difficult situation just because, you know, he kept recruiting lots of good talent, some really good players. You know, they beat Notre Dame just 2 years ago when Notre Dame went to the championship. Um,
It's true.
and like he's done such a good job recruiting players, but they don't have much. They didn't have much NIL. Couldn't hold on to those players. They kept, getting plucked by the portal. And he's been, I feel like for the past year, been kind of sounding alarm for a little bit on that. And I think it wasn't surprising that with, once again, after a rough season this past year, you have your best players leaving again. I think it just kind of ran in a situation where it was like, what is he going to do? Um, you know, Potentially on the hot seat even. So I think it just became time for him to go and head somewhere else. But I think it's also, once again, showing the concerns that we're driving good coaches away because we don't have the portal figured out.
So, they're moving in. They're going to be, somewhat at a disadvantage. You seem to think that they're going to be fine. By introducing a new predator into the ecosystem that is the Mountain West Conference, how do you see that shaking out for the other teams? Who's who's going to get caught and who's going to maybe show them what the FBS is all about?
It's going to be really interesting. I think I'll start out with the ones that are probably going to show them a little bit more of FBS. Like they're going to be the real good measuring sticks of where they are. I think their biggest challenges are going to be Hawaii. UNLV is going to be there good again, and you got to look at New Mexico as well with what Jason Eck is building down there, and he's very familiar of going against North Dakota State. Before he went to Idaho, he was part of that South Dakota State program when South Dakota State started to get some wins against North Dakota State. So he knows a lot about trying to beat that program. So I think those three are going to be the biggest challengers, but you're also going to look at it all depends on like how things shake out with some of these other teams, like San Jose State. How's it going to look for them? They had a good team, but this past year they couldn't finish drives. They kept turning the ball over a bunch, so they regressed to 3-9 when we thought they could have had a good year. Air Force couldn't play defense. I don't think that's going to last. I think they're going to figure that side of the ball out. So it'll be kind of interesting. I think right now I would put North Dakota State more towards the contender tier than a lower one. But it'll be kind of interesting to see how they measure up with Hawaii, UNLV, and New Mexico in particular.
And it'll also kind of depend on the sequencing of their schedule, right? If you're playing those tougher teams first, kind of take the wind out of your sails a little bit. Like that's the psychological game here. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I mean on the flip side, like when you're later in the year and you're dealing with the FBS level for the first time, and I mean the Missouri Valley is a really really tough conference for the most part, but there's still games against like Murray State and Indiana State where North Dakota State would get to rest some starters late in the game. They're not going to have that benefit anymore. So what does the depth look like when they get late in the year? Is going to be another question.
Absolutely. I was thinking some of the viewers may not know all of the logistics behind, moving from the FCS to the FBS. We mentioned the money. You got to pay the conference to join. Schedule's going to be tougher. Are they eligible for a bowl? And if so, why is it in 2028?
In other words, you know the answer to that. Currently,
Yeah.
there's a 2-year waiting period when you move up to be eligible for a bowl. I think it's an old, antiquated rule that for some reason has never gone away. Like, why punish the team for moving up? You know, like I can understand if a team is moving down and you know, like they're moving down, they have an advantage at the moment, maybe not make them eligible, but why punish the team for moving up? That doesn't make sense. They're going to be applying for a waiver. They're going to try to see if they can get that through to maybe be competitive. Maybe, you know, let them know, oh, hey, you know, this is an unprecedented program moving up. Look at how quickly some of these other teams like Appalachian State and Georgia Southern, look how quickly they became competitive. But then look at us because we have more national titles than any other FCS program in history. We are a different program. So I would suspect that's their argument. We'll see how it goes. Because again, like if they're eligible, we're talking about a team that could even win the Mountain West and reach the playoff. Like they are definitely a contender to do that, which would be absolutely electric if a team did that in their first year. But the other way is potentially we saw this with Delaware and Missouri State this past year. They managed to reach a bowl because there weren't enough bowl eligible teams, but both those teams were over 6 wins. So both Delaware and Missouri State got the bowl, and Delaware even won their bowl game. So it's a possibility that we get to see that again.
Yeah, it sounds like that rule is it is truly, when you boil it down, you're punishing the promotion. Because in soccer, they let you get your ass whooped, you know? And then when you lose, they'll give you the golden spoon. So, you know, there isn't like any preclusions, like you can't be in the playoffs or, you know, whatever. So that's an interesting rule that they have.
Yeah, I think by interesting, you're nicely saying that rule stinks because
Absolutely.
I will say it definitely does. that rule is a joke, and I hope we start to get rid of it.
Well, maybe we transition over to our neck of the woods. Dude, why the hell is Sacramento State in the MAC conference?
I was looking forward to how you're. So this is a very weird arrangement. Yes, Sacramento State is joining a conference with, teams in the Rust Belt and UMass. Which, by the way, the other day I got excited when I saw the map. I thought UMass was part of the Rust Belt too. They're not. But the rest of the teams are part of the Rust Belt. This is not unprecedented, by the way. Don't forget that for 3 years in the early 2000s, UCF was in the MAC. And that was a very weird arrangement.
I do remember
However, this
that.
is a... Yeah, like probably like an old video game. Like you play it and you're like, oh yeah, here you go, UCF's in the back.
Yeah.
But obviously this is a little bit different because we're talking about a team all the way in the West Coast. To simply put this, like the first answer is money. That's why. I think this became like a 5-year deal. Sacramento State is really paying to get into the MAC, and I think paying to enter a conference is actually more of a newer concept. You know, usually there's a waiting period before you can take advantage of like TV revenue or something. But this is where you're actually physically handing over money to join a conference. This is kind of new. And I think it's another reason why we should get rid of the bowl ban rule, because I think these teams are already kind of fronting the bill by having to pay to join conferences. So this is definitely a weird new thing. Sacramento State kind of floated it out first. North Dakota State kind of took advantage of it, got into the Mountain West, and now Sacramento State finally pulled it through here. And I think North Dakota State's price kind of upped the max price for Sacramento State because they're like, hey, you guys are further out. You don't bring what North Dakota State does, so, fork over some extra cash. But this is a 5-year deal.
That's a shakedown, dude.
They did. They definitely shook them down. They were like, hey, you want to join, like, you are going to give us this. You're going to pay for the travel expenses and all of that. And I mean, the weird part is like they literally announced this a 5-year deal. So like that within the announcement already kind of tells you this is a short-term arrangement. This is not permanent.
A means
Sacramento
to an
State.
ends.
Sacramento State has been a program of high aspirations ever since their president took over. Their president, Luke Wood, took over in 2023. He was the guy that was like, hey, we're going to make the Sacramento team, we're going to make Sacramento State a huge part of this city. And, that involved getting them up to the next level. At the time when he took over, like the program was in good shape in football too. Like they had a year, they were just coming off a year where they were undefeated in the regular season, and then they lost in the playoffs in the wildest playoff game ever. They lost to Incarnate Word 66-63. There is no overtime involved in that score. Straight up in regulation.
Jeez.
Both teams scored in the last minute of that game. So they were in a good position already, and he was like, we're going to further this by getting them to FBS. But, they were still looked down upon by some of the conferences. I think some of his messaging kind of was a little bit out there.
Little Kurt Cignetti-esque.
Not quite. A little bit more cringy than Kurt Cignetti. Because, like Kurt Cignetti could, when Kurt Cignetti talks, like, he's going to cash a check that he's writing.
It's true.
For a long time, there was stuff like, he called the FCS, I think Bush League or something. And a lot of teams really took offense to that. They were ready to prove it to him. Open season, South Dakota State makes them feel the pain from the start. And then later in the year, he calls Montana the Pandas for some reason. I don't know why. This is like, the weirdest trash talk I've ever seen. And then Montana crushed him. So, like, he's very much a character, but I also like what he has in mind. Like, I want to make Sacramento State this massive program. And that, we got to get to the FBS level to do that. Maybe his messaging behind what FCS is was not great. I don't agree with it, but I also like that he was like, we're going to give Sacramento an FBS team. We're going to make it a big deal. And, they had to get the FBS to get there. So this was their in to get into FBS, because it sounds like the Mountain West is not interested in this arrangement. Pac-12 was not interested, even though the Pac-12 definitely needs a team. And Conference USA, maybe they weren't interested in Conference USA. Maybe they preferred the MAC. But so they get to FBS. And the MAC, on the other hand, they're getting a nice cash injection out of all this.
It's true. It's true. When you think about it, just the distance, right? We're talking coast to coast. You have a Sacramento State, playing in UMass definitely has a football team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking in terms of Boston, then I was like, wait a minute. Like, what if they don't have one? Yes, of course. Of course they have one. We're talking coast to coast, baby. That's crazy. They're going to be traveling a lot.
And can you imagine if that game's on the weeknight? Like surely they won't. But they definitely would. Matt just threw the funniest comment in there.
Where?
In our chat. Distracted me for a moment. But anyways, but yeah, the coast to coast is going to be really interesting, and really, like, how is it going to work when it comes to these weeknight games? Because I mean, on the road, that's fine. I know it's going to be tough playing, in Ypsilanti on the Tuesday night in front of 10 people, but at the same time, like, when they're hosting a game during November, what is going to be the arrangement there? Because there's no happy medium on a Tuesday night for a Sacramento State home game. Because if you're even looking at like a 7 o'clock local kick, Sacramento time, that's 10 o'clock Eastern. I mean, there's people out there that love their alums. And, like, I'm a Bowling Green alum, you're a Miami alum, but I mean, staying up till 2 a.m. on a weeknight ain't happening.
No, yeah.
So that's too late. but then anything earlier it's impossible to get to in California traffic. So every other kick time is too early. So that's kind of the situation they're in there, where it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Because they are relying on fan attendance. It was very much when the president mentioned this, like, it definitely sounded like money from people attending games is going to be a key part of Sacramento State's plan. So they're not going to take too kindly if they have to kick off a game at 4 o'clock local. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, what's going to happen with those weeknight games?
Yeah, you're right. That's a logistical nightmare, and they're gonna face it every week. That's not on any weeknight game. They're gonna struggle.
Yeah, and that's all of November.
Even if they did, kind of a late kickoff on, Saturday. The MAC isn't that, the MAC doesn't have the most dedicated fans. I don't imagine many will stay up super late to catch it, So they're really going to be having to carry their own, I think.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say, on the weekends, I will definitely eat up the idea of Sacramento State versus UMass after dark. That'll be hilarious.
Get you some popcorn, put on your pajamas. Yeah, dude.
or the ball sack bowl.
Yeah. That was
Ball State, Sacramento State.
That's a good one. That's a great one. I wonder what they'll do. Will they change the scoreboards?
Yeah, you can't put the short names in there. Ball versus sack.
Yeah, you'll have to put something. Anyways, we digress. Wait. What if they actually embrace it? Like, what if they go all in? Like, all right, guys, this is the ball sack bowl. It is what it is. Dude.
How funny would that be?
That'd be hilarious, Can you imagine it? Even the branding. That'd be the most popular bowl,
Yeah. I mean, this would be a regular season game, but you could put that thing on ESPN and a million people will watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And every high schooler and middle schooler would it'd be the new 6-7, dude.
Oh my! What if we get trending Ball State versus Sacramento State?
They start putting it on Thanksgiving.
Ball State does need a. I think they need an opponent that week with NIU out there now. So why not the Ball Sack Bowl?
Yeah. Matt says Mac needs to add Rhode Island School of Design. Go Nads.
But yeah, I would also think that maybe when a Sacramento State's bye weeks occurs during November, I think that's potentially, that way, maybe if you have one game that you send out there, that can work okay. But it's definitely still an interesting situation because you've got a conference where 12 of your members are all in the Eastern time zone, and then you just got Sacramento State over there in the Pacific time zone.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough. We kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of scheduling, but how does this move impact the MAC? Right? Is it, and you seem very, very high on their possibility. Do you see them having a good chance to worm their way into the conference and kind of do something?
We'll have to see. I think they're entering in a challenging time right now. They just lost their head coach. Brendan Marion is bringing the go-go offense to Colorado. So we just barely missed out on the go-go offense in the MAC. But so he's gone. They lost some players. So first-year head coach. So really just a brand new everything going on. I think that'll make it pretty challenging for them. Although at least they brought in a good quarterback in Conklin. He started with the program as a freshman. He went to Fresno State for a little bit. Now he's coming back. I think he's at least a good starting point for them. I think they'll be pretty tricky when they're at home. I think that's a long road trip the MAC teams are not used to. Um, so I think Sacramento State can pull off some of those home games. On the road is probably going to be a different story. I'm not sure how much they're going to win on the road, especially as it gets colder later in the year. They're not going to be very used to that much cold weather. Now, obviously, sometimes they play those Montana schools late in the year when it's cold, but they're not super used to that.
Yeah. It's, you know, we've kind of talked a lot about what the incoming team does to the conference. But we didn't talk about what those teams leaving the FCS does to the rest of the FCS. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is really fascinating because honestly, the reaction was not quite what I expected. I feel like a lot of South Dakota State fans in particular were angry, kind of a sense of panic almost. Like, we just lost our biggest rival. Our biggest rival is in a completely different division. We don't know when we're going to play them again. Like, the Dakota marker is a huge game. And for at least a couple of years, we probably won't have it. I'm very curious to see where this impacts South Dakota State in particular. They're the one that's definitely taking the biggest impact of this because they followed North Dakota State everywhere they went. They both moved up to FCS at the same time in 2004. South Dakota State got a lot better because of North Dakota State. They saw their rival winning championships, and they turned around and they started winning championships. So now it feels like South Dakota State might be starting to push to get themselves FBS ready because they're going to want to go up and join their biggest rival. The other curious part is, like, I didn't expect the same impact on Montana and Montana State fans. I feel like for a long time, those fan bases have been very happy at the FCS level, very happy with, avoiding the drama that the power conferences cause at the FBS level. I think they're happy being away from that for a long time. But it appears this move has kind of made some of them rethink that a little bit. They're like, well, hang on a moment here. The biggest program in the FCS just moved on. Do we want to avoid getting left behind too? So it's kind of interesting that they even gave that thought. Now, ultimately, how I feel, I think FCS is going to be fine. This division had Appalachian State look really good. Appalachian State won 3 titles in a row. They went to FBS not long after that. Georgia Southern won a lot of titles. They went to FBS. Like, I think the subdivision usually goes along pretty well, no matter what goes on. And I think this will be the same here. I feel like they're outside of those 3 fan bases that I mentioned before. I think a lot of people kind of felt like it was time for North Dakota State to move on. Like, they kept dominating. There wasn't a lot of championships to go around because they were winning all of them. And then eventually, when a fan base of the program does not embrace FCS, it's really not fun to have them in there. And that kind of became the case for North Dakota State, obviously Sacramento State as well, where they both wanted out. And I think a lot of the fans were okay seeing them go. So ultimately, I think FCS will be fine. I think it's going to be really interesting to see the additional parity that we're going to see at that level now because, your biggest program, your dominant program is now out of there.
There'll be a vacuum.
I think we saw the example. I think we even saw the example this year. North Dakota State got eliminated early on, and the 4 teams that were left were historical FCS programs. They've been at the FCS level pretty much since the start of history. So those legacy programs kind of already started to step up a little bit. and show, hey, I think we're going to be okay.
It'll be interesting, and we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this episode once we have a better idea of how the season is going to shake out. We got a comment from Nicholas, and he says, "What is going to happen to the schedules that they already had?" That's a logistical question. Very fair. Good question, dude.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to see. I think for North Dakota State, they may try to go and get themselves some FBS teams, but there's not a lot available. Most of the schedules are set. North Dakota State has a full schedule, but for the FCS level, like, Sacramento State, they have 8 non-conference games scheduled. They need to cut at least 4 of those games. And unfortunately, what Nicholas was talking about, a really cool game that was going to happen. Sacramento State was going to head down to the Valley to play UTRGV. Unfortunately, I am afraid that game probably won't happen. I think for the most part, Sacramento State's going to get rid of those road games. They play UTRGV on the road. They play Maine on the road. They're definitely not going up to Toronto, Maine anymore in November or whenever that game was. So you're going to see those teams remove some games from the schedule for sure. And it's going to be a very interesting process to watch because it's definitely in flux, and there's not a lot of time to figure it out.
Yeah, it's February, but it seems like, with college, it ramps up quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're looking at, trying to, normally schedules are out for a lot of teams. So, there's only a few teams left. I think there's only like 4 or 5 FBS teams left that even have a slot open. So it's definitely going to be really interesting. And, I think UTRGV is kind of a good point to bring up here when it comes to how the FCS level is going to be. The power vacuum sets up a program like UTRGV to potentially jump up there and succeed. Like, they have the facilities. They have an area that's very passionate about them. I think it's so cool that that valley down in Texas, like, it's a very populated area that didn't have any FBS football, any college football for a long time. So UTRGV is like a perfect fit there. And I think that's what kind of makes, FCS kind of a special division, where it's not like Division II or anything like that. Like, FCS is a division where there's programs in these very big regions where those fans just care about that. Like, people in Montana just care about FCS football. People in South Dakota just care about FCS football. You're getting down now, you get down to the Valley, and now in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, you've only got one program down there. So I think it's good when you have a program like that where they basically have a monopoly on the area.
Yeah. Great point, dude. Well, any final words you think for tonight's show for these conference moves?
No more for that. It'll be kind of interesting to see what happens next if anyone else moves up anytime soon. Tarleton State's probably the next one that I want to look at for FCS, moving up from FCS. I feel like they're bound to at any point now. Probably to Conference USA, but maybe the Mountain West. We'll see. But looks like Matt popped in the comments here, and he wants us to do this food topic. There is a guy who sued the Buffalo Wild Wings. Didn't that happen already? Didn't someone already sue Buffalo Wild Wings a while ago, claiming that boneless wings were not wing meat and lost? Oh, wait, yeah. Okay. Judge claims the guy's lawsuit holds no meat. Yes, Matt. The barbecue places near, they have, Matt, you have not seen our comment section on Twitter. I'll tell you what. They have told us a lot about their barbecue, their tacos. They're straight up, like, I'll tell you what, like, you fans in the Valley, like, thank you for your support because you guys have been like straight up rolling out the red carpet for us. We would definitely hope to make it down there because, man, there's a lot of good food. And we love food.
Crowdfund us, baby. We'll do a show there. For free.
Yes, just get us down there, please.
Just buy us some barbecue.
Okay, I guess. Yes. So Buffalo Wild Wings can call them chicken poppers now? Judge claims the lawsuit holds no meat. Buffalo Wild Wings can call them chicken poppers now.
That's
what a
wild.
weird thing.
I mean, I don't know. That's some sketchy stuff, is what I think that is. That's one of the symptoms of our wonderful food industry in America. So, but that's a topic altogether different. That would be all about it, though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting how things work these days. You get lesser quality, but the prices keep going higher.
Absolutely. One thing that I'll plug, MLS season is kicking off officially on Saturday. So, Matt and I will be providing some MLS talk. Just keeping an ear to the ground on the happenings in the soccer world. The World Cup's coming up. I think that'll be cool for a lot of people, and good for the sport too. So, remind me, Justin, when is our planned MLS show? Is it next week?
Yes, I was going to say that leads me into tune in next week. Matt and Tony will be crushing it on the MLS end with a show there, kind of like looking at how things look in the opening week and kind of what you can look forward to. With MLS and just soccer in general. So yeah, we got that to look forward to. College basketball going on. Miami's still undefeated. Definitely is a fun ride. And we'll have more shows coming with that. Stay tuned because we'll be having a couple basketball shows. We'll be previewing the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament. So stay tuned for that. Lots of good stuff coming your way. And, of course, as always, be sure to follow us. We are on all the social media platforms you can think of. Twitter. Some people call it the other thing. I call it Twitter still. I think a lot of people do. Now, not many of us have been sold on the new name. We're on Facebook, Instagram, whatever those other social media networks are. YouTube.
Uh-oh. we got a crash. So, till he gets back up and unfrozen, you can follow us.
Yep, there we go.
All right, welcome back. You're about to hear me tell a tale. I didn't know where the tail was going to go, but I was getting ready to say it.
It would have been fun. It would have been very fun to see where that would have gone. But anyways, so we're available on YouTube. And also the biggest change we made in the last few weeks is we are bringing a bigger emphasis to our podcasting platforms. So that way, if you, if it's not easy for you to watch a video during the day, or, you just get tired of seeing my face, which I definitely don't blame you. It's available there for you as well. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. So be sure to subscribe to us there, and also give us a 5-star rating. Yeah, that way, we have another way to help grow us out a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Hey, every little bit gets us closer to that trip down the Rio Grande Valley.
That's all we're doing this for. It's the barbecue. We're very food motivated.
Yep, to see a UTRGV football game and have the tacos and barbecue. That is what we're here for. And of course, we're here to bring coverage to the programs that don't get enough coverage and the sports that don't get enough coverage and everything like that, kind of filling the gaps that the larger media market networks leave you. With that being said, thanks for joining us. I'm going to end this Midwestern goodbye now. Thanks, and have a great